Ah, you finally made it, Arya. Jack said, a look of relief washing over his face as he turned his eyes towards me. Lying in the hospital bed, his shoulder was immobilized in a cast, which probably made it hard for him to move. He then looked up at me, who was silently staring down at him, and pleaded with a hint of impatience, "Please, could you help me clean myself?" That's just like Jack, always so concerned about cleanliness. He must have been irritated about not being able to take a bath without the doctor's permission, but I didn't feel the slightest obligation to help him. What? After you cheated with my best friend? I snapped coldly. Before I could add anything else, the curtain was quickly drawn aside, and there stood my best friend, Camila, saying, "What?" The other person wasn't me, while indignantly pointing to the bed behind her. And there it was. My name is Arya Davis, a 42-year-old nurse. It's been a quick 23 years since I graduated from nursing school and started working at the public hospital where I'm currently employed. Last year, I was promoted to head nurse. My days are filled with organizing skill-building workshops for my eager staff and ensuring a comfortable stay for our patients, among other duties. Naturally, my personal life often takes a back seat, with my rare days off devoted to catching up on household chores and getting some much-needed rest. Seeing me like this, my best friend Camila often scolds me, saying, "Come on, what's with that lifestyle? You're turning into a total homebody." But no matter how many times she tells me, I just nod and let it go in one ear and out the other. Maybe she's grown tired of it because lately, she's been quieter. This leaves me feeling a bit lonely, yet somehow relieved too. It's a complicated mix of emotions. However, when I unexpectedly got a day off according to the calendar, Camila invited me to join her at a mixer. Camila, like me, is also single, but she had been married once in her early 20s. Initially, after her divorce caused by her husband's infidelity, Camila used to say with a wry smile, "Oh, I'm so over marriage. I might be up for dating again, but I've had enough of marriage certificates and divorce papers." But recently, she seems to have been inspired by a senior female colleague at work, whom she admired as a role model. This colleague unexpectedly got married later in life and seemed blissfully happy. This led Camila to start thinking, maybe marriage isn't so bad after all. I'm at a good age, and I've learned how to handle the tough times, but it's kind of sad not having someone to share the happy moments with. So, she began actively participating in mixers. A mixer, huh? Well, Camila, you always look fabulous and younger than your age, so it might be good for you. But I'm just an average woman at my age, so maybe it's not for me, I gently declined. However, Camila persisted, "Don't worry. The mixers I attend always have a well-balanced age group." Given that, I felt it would be rude to always decline, so I decided to join just this once. I thought that would satisfy Camila. And it was at that mixer where I met Jack, who would become my fiancé. Jack worked at the same company as Camila and was 48 years old, 6 years my senior. He had always wanted to get married but kept putting it off because he found his work so engaging. Before he knew it, he was at his current age. I don't regret my choices, but I started thinking how nice it would be to have a partner to share life's laughter with from now on. He said with a somewhat embarrassed smile. His demeanor made me smile too, and we naturally ended up exchanging contact information. As time went by, we enjoyed meals and drinks whenever we could and took short drives to the suburbs. After about a year of dating, Jack proposed to me. By that time, I had also begun to think that spending the rest of my life with Jack would be wonderful, so I happily accepted his proposal. When it came time to meet each other's parents, especially Jack's mother, who lived quite close by, openly showed her disappointment upon learning that her son's bride-to-be was me, already past 40. Moreover, when Jack's mother inquired about the university I graduated from and my current job as a nurse, she turned to Jack's father, who was standing next to her, and said, if she were a younger bride, we could have hoped for respectable grandchildren, but well, she's a nurse, I guess she just barely passes. While Jack's mother was talking, his father was looking at her with a face like he was chewing on something bitter. I thought he might be about to scold her for such rudeness. However, to my surprise, he said, "What do you mean barely passes? Whether she's a nurse or whatever, an old lady is still an old lady." I instinctively looked over at Jack, but he just gave a wry smile, not rebuking his parents at all, and kept up his usual slightly troubled but smiling face. While this was happening, Jack's mother, looking quite pleased with herself, said to her husband, "That's where you're short-sighted, dear. If the bride is a nurse, she can take care of your mother, who's currently in a nursing home. That way, we can save on the home's costs, and even get back the initial deposit. Plus, as a wife, she can provide 24/7 care for free." Jack really has an eye for practicality. Upon hearing this, the father seemed convinced and nodded to Jack, saying, "I see what you mean. Sorry for not understanding your intentions right away." Next to him, Jack exaggeratedly sniffled and tearfully said, "As long as you understand," which was more chilling than annoying to me. Honestly, I don't clearly remember what happened or what was said after that. Stunned, I got into Jack's car and we started heading home. That's when Jack said, "So, when should we visit your parents' house? Since we're going to cut ties with them after we're married, it'll be the first and last time. Maybe we should book a fancy hotel restaurant or something." Snapping back to reality, I coldly replied, "You don't need to bother visiting my family." However, it seemed that the chill in my voice didn't register with Jack, as he cheerfully responded, "Oh, really? Well, no need for unnecessary expenses then. That practicality is also one of the reasons I thought you'd make a good wife." He seemed even more pleased with himself. I was getting increasingly frustrated and wanted to retort, but realized that I had been clenching my jaw so hard during the entire time at Jack's parents' house that I had started to develop a severe headache. So, I told him he didn't need to drive me all the way to my apartment and asked to be dropped off at a nearby station instead. Then, Jack responded, "What? No way, you have a migraine? Have you been sick all this time? Not being able to take care of yourself is the worst," and with that dismissive remark, he didn't even drive me to the station. Instead, he abruptly pulled over to the side of the road, urged me to get out, and left without a backward glance. On my taxi ride home, I gradually returned to my usual self and began to feel genuinely upset as I recalled what Jack's family had said. It was the first I'd heard about Jack's grandmother being in a nursing home, and the idea that they wanted to use me as free caregiving labor just to save money was appalling. I was angry with myself for not seeing Jack's true nature after a year of dating, but fortunately, we hadn't registered our marriage yet. Breaking off an engagement is simpler than getting a divorce. While soaking in my home bathtub, I decided to act quickly. The next day, I resolved to go to Jack's place and end this marriage talk. That night, I fell asleep determined to do so. The following day, I apologized to the hospital for the sudden change but managed to swap my shift and headed to Jack's apartment. Ideally, I should have made an appointment, but I was filled with the feeling that I didn't want to waste time talking to Jack. I figured if I visited early on a Saturday morning, I'd surely catch him at home, considering it was his day off according to the calendar. However, when I arrived at Jack's fancy high-rise, no matter how much I rang his apartment's intercom, there was no response. I sent a message on social media, but it wasn't even read. Emails and phone calls were met with the same silence. Honestly, I was a bit let down by the sudden loss of momentum, but since I had the day off, I decided to go to Jack's family home to settle things once and for all today. Jack might have stayed at his parents' home after our last encounter. Even if Jack wasn't there, I figured it would be easy to break off the engagement by simply telling his parents that I couldn't possibly be a suitable wife for their family. Fortunately, we hadn't exchanged engagement gifts or made any financial commitments like reserving a wedding venue or buying engagement rings. So, I thought that as long as we both agreed, calling off the engagement would be straightforward. Yesterday, I had just visited Jack's family home, and today I headed back there in a taxi again. But right before I got out of the taxi, I spotted Jack's parents, Jack himself, and a woman with a familiar-looking back, all four of them getting into a car. Feeling uneasy, I asked the taxi to follow Jack's car. About 15 minutes from the house, I saw them pull into the parking lot of a diner. I had the taxi pass by and then make a U-turn to come back. I got out of the taxi and headed towards the entrance of the diner. Being a weekend morning, the restaurant was fairly bustling with families enjoying breakfast and people who seemed to be heading out on a trip, probably because there was an interstate entrance nearby. While hiding behind the line of people waiting to pay, I scanned the restaurant and saw the group of 4 sitting in a booth by the window. I asked a waiter to seat me in the booth back-to-back with them. Luckily, there were several pots of artificial plants as dividers between the booths, so while I could hear everything, my presence, hidden behind the backrest, would go unnoticed unless I stood up. After quickly placing my order, I started eavesdropping. I couldn't believe it when I heard Jack's father, speaking in a completely different tone from how he had spoken to me yesterday, saying, "Well, Camila is young and sincere, and I'd be absolutely thrilled if someone like her eventually became Jack's wife. I can't wait for that day." "Camila, that Camila?" Realizing who he was talking about was a shock that turned my world dark. No wonder the young woman I glimpsed from the taxi seemed familiar. It was my best friend, Camila. She's dating Jack? Camila and Jack, co-workers at the same company, but since when? Since Jack and I started dating? Or were they already together before we met at that mixer? But then, why did Jack date me and even go as far as proposing? My mind was swarming with questions, but I tried hard to focus on the conversation next to me. What I gathered was that Jack and Camila had recently started dating, and there was already talk of marriage between them. Moreover, both Jack's family and Camila knew about the ongoing marriage discussions between me and Jack. Why on earth did they want me and Jack to get married? I began to wonder if what they said yesterday about wanting around-the-clock, free caregiver wasn't just a bad joke. Then I heard Jack say, "I really don't want to marry that old lady, but I've heard she's quite wealthy. She'd be perfect to take care of Grandma until she passes away." Meanwhile, I can secretly continue dating Camila. Jack's parents laughed, with his father adding, "If a grandchild comes along by then, we can ask her to leave for the child's sake, and get a divorce without any alimony. Actually, if we play our cards right, we might even squeeze some alimony out of her." And his mother chimed in, "That's a great plan. We could accuse her of rough handling or something during the caregiving and get an easy split." They all laughed heartily at this. Hearing this, I barely managed to contain my boiling anger towards Jack's family and Camila while still listening intently. I learned that Jack and Camila, taking advantage of the upcoming 3-day weekend, were planning a trip to a hot springs resort and spa accessible only by car. They were going to rent a 4WD from a rental car store near the diner, as their usual sedan wouldn't suffice for the remote location. Their parents had apparently driven them to the diner to see them off. Fueled by anger, I decided not to confront them there and then. Instead, I resolved to gather evidence and make them pay later. To avoid being seen, I slipped out of the diner before the 4 of them left. From a convenience store across the street, I watched through the window. Soon, Jack's parents got into their car in the parking lot and drove off home, while Jack and Camila, both wearing matching caps and pulling carry-on bags, walked away. I had checked on my smartphone's map app earlier. There was a car rental place about 650 feet from here, and they seemed to be heading there. Watching their backs with a heavy heart, I turned around and opened a ride-hailing app. I had a night shift that day due to a last-minute schedule change, so I focused on my work until Sunday morning, pushing all other thoughts aside. After my shift ended, I headed back to my apartment to get some sleep. On the way, I checked my phone and saw a surprising number of missed calls, messages, and emails. Wondering what had happened, I saw that more than 2/3 of them were from Jack, and the rest were voicemails from an unknown number. Growing more suspicious, I decided to check the answering machine and heard a message from a clerk at a hospital in the area where Jack and his friends had said they were going to a hot spring spa yesterday. The clerk mentioned, "A patient who was brought in last night after a self-inflicted car accident asked me to contact you. They urgently want you to call back." I was initially shocked and even thought maybe it was some kind of divine punishment, but more importantly, I wondered why they had contacted me. Hesitant to call Jack's cell phone directly, I looked up the hospital online and called the main line. The clerk who had left the message on the answering machine filled me in on the details. After hearing this, I quickly arranged a ticket for the next day to the nearest station to the hospital, then went to bed. The next morning, I set out early and arrived smoothly at the hospital. I killed time at a nearby cafe until the hospital's visiting hours, which I had checked in advance. When the time seemed right, I went to visit Jack's room. In the two-person room I was led to, Jack was lying on the bed closer to the door, his shoulders tightly bandaged and his left leg in a cast. He smiled weakly and said, "Arya, I can't believe you came all this way, thank you," as he noticed me entering, barely moving due to the pain. I knew he was probably trying to gain my sympathy, but I was well aware of his tricks. As I stood there silently, Jack, growing anxious, tried to start various conversations, but I gave no reaction and just ignored him. Finally, showing some irritation, Jack said, "Please, help me wipe down," and nodded towards a table beside him where a thin towel, apparently bought from the hospital shop and still in its bag, was placed. I glanced briefly at Jack, but as I continued to stand silently, he grew more irritated and snapped, "Come on, just do it already. What's your deal?" while clicking his tongue in dissatisfaction. I strode over to his bed, leaned towards him, and said coldly, "What? After cheating with my best friend?" Before Jack could say anything, the curtain separating the beds was pulled back with a swish. "Hey, it wasn't me," said Camila, pointing to a woman lying on the bed behind her, shrinking back. "This guy's affair partner is her," she informed me. I was momentarily stunned by Camila's sudden appearance and the unknown woman lying in the bed. But Jack, seizing my reaction, yelled at Camila, "What the hell are you doing? Don't spread lies. Get out of here." He tried to throw pillows and a water bottle at her in a fit of rage. A few nurses and I had to restrain Jack, who glared at Camila with frustration. Camila remained calm amidst the chaos. When I hesitantly mentioned, "That woman over there, she kind of looks like you, with the same hairstyle and build. So, are you not Jack's affair partner?" Camila's face turned bright red. "You can't be serious. You didn't think I was the one, did you?" she retorted, to which I timidly replied, "Sorry, I thought so." She sighed loudly and said, "That's ridiculous. I'm not that bad." Ignoring a suddenly silent Jack and the other woman, Camila explained. About 2 months ago, she had accidentally seen Jack and Camila walking arm in arm through the city at night. Knowing from me that Jack and I were dating, she thought it was an affair. But instead of telling me right away, she decided to gather solid evidence first. And just as I overheard at the diner, Jack and Camila were planning something far worse than an affair. They intended to marry me off to Jack, secretly enjoy a bigamous relationship themselves, and make me take care of Jack's grandmother in the meantime. Just when I had sent a message saying I guess we're engaged now since Jack proposed, Camila, who was finalizing evidence of their secret meetings for a friend, heard from a colleague in HR that Jack had an accident on his hot spa trip and was hospitalized. Thinking I must be with him, she rushed over. "This guy rented a car through the company's benefits, so we got the accident news fast. I tried calling Arya but couldn't reach her. And guess what? The woman in the same hospital room is his affair partner. I thought Arya would be shocked if she found out." As expected, I arrived, but something seemed off. As she watched anxiously from behind the curtain, she was surprised to hear herself being accused of cheating with Jack. But what shocked her even more was that I thought she was the one being the affair partner. So it was my turn to explain. I had seen this woman named Camila, who looked a lot like Camila from a distance, at Jack's family home together with his family at a diner. I had mistakenly thought it was Camila because Jack's mother had mentioned a younger woman, and Camila looked just like her. When I shared this, Camila's expression turned to one of utter disbelief. In reality, Camila and I are close enough to be considered best friends, even though she is nearly a decade younger than me. This close friendship with Camila originated because she was the younger sister of my best friend during my middle and high school years. We spent a lot of time together as sisters, but after her sister, who was my age, tragically passed away in an accident, our friendship grew even stronger than before. However, despite Camila's carefree attitude towards me, I couldn't help but wonder if she felt burdened by our friendship, considering our age difference and completely different careers. This thought made me feel as though I had unintentionally built an insurmountable wall between us. Reflecting on these thoughts, I offered a heartfelt apology. Camila, seeing this, grinned and said, "Well, if Arya is also fed up with these jerks, then there's no need to hold back. Time to give them a taste of their own medicine," she said with a mischievous smile at Jack and Camilla. Seeing Camila's confident demeanor, Jack and Camilla were momentarily taken aback. But then Jack scoffed, "What the hell? Don't make me laugh. I was only with this old lady because she seemed useful. If she wants to break up, fine, I'll let her go." However, Camila, unfazed by Jack's bravado, provocatively said, "Oh really, feeling bold, silly Jack? What were you two discussing before I sneaked into this room?" She then thrust forward the object she had been holding in her hand, showing it to them. Intrigued by her gesture, we all leaned in to see what she was holding. It was a voice recorder. Camila then revealed that at the time of the accident, it was Camilla, not Jack, who was driving the rental car. Moreover, Camilla was actually on a driving suspension and had declared to the rental company that only Jack would be driving. Despite having enjoyed night viewing drinks at the inn, they had irresponsibly decided to drive to a nearby famous spot for nightclubs. Camila had recorded their conversation where they carelessly talked about all this. Just as Camila finished speaking, Jack, in a desperate attempt, snatched the voice recorder from her hand and, groaning in pain, tossed it into a water pitcher beside the bed. "Too bad, there goes your evidence," Jack said with a smirk. But Camila, now sporting an even more sinister smile, retorted, "Oh, what a shame. I'm not dumb enough to show off crucial evidence to the enemy like that," and then revealed a smaller voice recorder in her other hand. She also showed a pen-style IC recorder from her shirt pocket and a voice recorder app open on her smartphone in her bag. With a sly grin, she said, "See, I'm pretty good at my job," then her expression turned serious. "I'll make sure you face the consequences for hurting my best friend," she said in a firm, low voice, looking straight into Jack's eyes. Caught off guard, Jack finally fell silent, but now Camilla turned on him.
"You idiot! It's all because of you and your parents messing up that our entire plan fell apart. You should be the one taking responsibility,"
she exclaimed, trying to confront him. But with one arm in a cast and sling, she couldn't get close enough and just ground her teeth in frustration. Jack, lifting his head, retorted, "Shut up, you trashy woman. Your only asset is being young. You misunderstood that and started talking about becoming my wife. Marrying a flimsy woman like you, I'd only end up raising someone else's kid. Who would fall for that?" Then, he also lowered his cast-covered leg from the bed and cursed as if he was about to grab her. Both were equally despicable, in a way, a perfect match. Expecting the nurses to rush into the room again at any moment to scold them, I urged Camila to leave. Standing up, I looked down at the two on the bed, ready to give my final ultimatum. "Enough, you're both so annoying. A perfect match indeed. A gold digger who cozies up to an engaged man, and a foolish guy who thinks he's smart but is just being played by a dumb woman. Just so you know, I don't have a shred of sympathy for you. The only thing I feel is contempt," I said, and then Camila and I left the room. Behind the closed door, I could hear Jack calling out to me and Camilla's angry shouts, but we ignored them and walked away. Before leaving the hot spring resort, I made a point to visit the stores and inns that Jack and his group had caused trouble for. Initially, the stores and inns thought we were relatives of the reckless driver and were quite standoffish. But when we explained the situation, their attitude changed dramatically, and they began sympathizing with us. We advised the owner of a catering shop, which had suffered significant damage. The police investigation might reveal it, but the driver who crashed into your store was likely under the influence and driving on a suspended license. You might not be able to use insurance, and worse, you could end up being stiffed on the damages. We promised to send him a copy of the recording we made in the hospital room, which captured Jack and Camilla admitting to drunk driving and their entire scheme to pin the blame on me. Camilla suggested that while Jack's whereabouts might be trackable, finding Camilla would be difficult if she quit her job during her probation period, given today's emphasis on privacy protection. She advised quick action and stressed keeping the source of the information confidential. Camilla shared what she knew about Camilla, a rough address of her parents' house, her current apartment, and that she was likely a provisional hire through executive connections, with the executive probably being her guarantor. The shop owner, whose store had been devastated by the sudden intrusion of the runaway car, repeatedly expressed his gratitude to us, saying we were like saviors to them. However, as he rightfully had the authority to claim damages from Jack and Camilla, the prospect of them facing retribution through this legal process was, in a way, a satisfying turn of events for us. In fact, we felt it was we who should be thanking him. Camilla and I, feeling triumphant, returned to the city, but the story was different for the two left behind in the hospital. Due to their extremely poor behavior, they were quickly asked to transfer to another facility, effectively being ousted from the hospital. Upon hearing the news, Jack's parents rushed to the hospital. However, they were greeted with a hefty bill for the hospitalization and surgery costs, which also included charges for the equipment Jack and Camilla had damaged. As a result, the cash they had on hand was nowhere near sufficient. Even their attempts to sell items like bags, watches, and jewelry at pawn shops near the hospital amounted to very little. It was like a drop in the bucket. Eventually, they resorted to using the sedan they arrived in as collateral to borrow money from a car title loan company known for its unfavorable terms. The catering shop owner, who called to thank us for providing the data, informed us that the sedan car would likely end up in the possession of this lender soon, given the company's notorious reputation. Furthermore, although this incident was fortunately a single-vehicle accident that did not involve anyone else, Camilla's drunk driving and suspended license were likely hidden, as the two did not report the accident to the police. Consequently, they would undoubtedly be unable to obtain a traffic accident report. Additionally, if the facts of drunk driving and driving with a suspended license were to come to light, not only would their personal injury insurance for their own injuries become invalid, but the vehicle insurance and property damage compensation for the totaled rental car would also be completely unusable. The thought of the debt hell that awaited them, lying in wait like a predator ready to pounce, brought an uncontrollable smile to my face. Subsequently, I hired a lawyer and formally demanded compensation from Jack for breaking off our engagement. Following this, Jack's parents, concerned about the reputation of Jack's company and their neighborhood, proposed, "We will pay double the standard amount if you agree to settle this matter quietly," and suggested naming the payment as severance money instead of compensation, citing that compensation sounded too negative. However, accepting money under the guise of severance could complicate things later, making it harder to discern who was at fault in the event of any future troubles related to the engagement's termination. In response, I flatly refused Jack's parents' offer and demanded not only the payment of compensation for the broken engagement but also insisted on a written document clearly stating that the reason for the termination of the engagement was due to Jack's infidelity. I required their signatures on this document. Faced with the reluctance of Jack's family, my lawyer pressed them, "If you dislike this, we can settle it in court. Is that what you want?" Subsequently, Jack's parents, seeing no other way, went to the hospital to get Jack's signature, and then transferred the full amount of the compensation to me in one go, much to my relief. In reality, if the case had gone to court, given that Jack and I had not held an engagement ceremony, booked a wedding venue, or exchanged engagement rings, it might have been debatable whether our engagement was even legally recognized. If it came to that, no matter how much I argued, the outcome would depend on a third party's judgment, like a judge. Concerned about this, my lawyer suggested a strategy of giving the other party no time to think deeply and pushing for immediate payment. This strategy worked perfectly on Jack's family, who, desperate to avoid further trouble, fell right into our trap and agreed to pay. They were indeed naive. Upon hearing from Jack's parents that the payment had been made, I went to the bank, updated my account condition, and confirmed the transaction. Then, I promptly proceeded to the next step. As a start, I reported to the police the fact that Camilla had been drinking while driving the rental car, along with the recorded evidence. The police contacted the rental car company for fact verification, which led to the company's legal counsel quickly arriving on the scene. After returning from the hospital, I printed out screenshots of the numerous social media messages that Jack and Camilla had sent me in an attempt to silence me. Along with these, I handed over the audio recordings of our interactions in the hospital room to the company's legal counsel. The lawyer, with a full grin on his face, expressed gratitude. "Thank you for your cooperation in every aspect. This will enable us to promptly proceed with the procedures for claiming damages." He then left, seemingly in high spirits, with a spring in his step. Later, a luxurious assortment of sweets arrived at my doorstep from the rental car company and their legal counsel's office, accompanied by a thank you letter. According to the letter, the rental car company, based on the evidence I had provided, notified Jack and Camilla that they were initiating a lawsuit for damages. This was due to the near-new rental car being totaled in the accident they caused. Simultaneously, a complaint was filed with the police, putting Jack and Camilla in a difficult situation. They hastily hired their own lawyer, but were bluntly told they had no chance of winning the lawsuit. They managed to settle by agreeing to pay the amount demanded by the rental car company. However, to make this lump sum payment, Jack had to face financial hardships with the mortgage of his prized high-rise apartment. It seems he had to move out and sell it, but regardless of how briefly it was lived in, a used property is still a used property. Ultimately, the sale price of Jack's high-rise apartment only reached about half of his asking price, and even after applying the entire amount to his mortgage, a considerable debt remained unpaid. Furthermore, the catering shop that Camilla's rented car crashed into demanded a substantial sum for the damages. The costs included repairs for the heavily damaged store, replacements for broken dishes and kitchen equipment, expenses for food stock bought for a 3-day holiday, compensation for alternative items and apologies to customers who had made reservations, loss of earnings due to closure during the lucrative busy season, and the replacement of a wrecked delivery minivan. In total, the bill amounted to around $700,000 in lump sum. Taking into account the advice Camilla and I had given, the shop demanded a lump sum payment from Jack and Camilla. They were warned that legal action would be taken immediately if they didn't comply. Normally, the compensation for the store damage should have been covered as property damage under personnel insurance. However, Jack and Camilla hadn't opted for the optional insurance when renting the car, and the default coverage for property damage was limited to only $200,000. Furthermore, the accident, caused by Camilla while she was under the influence and driving with a suspended license without being declared as a driver to the rental company, had not been reported at the time, thus no accident certificate was obtained. As we had anticipated, the insurance company denied coverage and Jack and Camilla ended up having to pay out of their own pockets. This led to a terrible argument between them about shifting blame.
"I never should have gotten involved with a jinx like you."
"That's my line. You were the one drooling over a younger woman," Camilla retorted during their heated exchange. This chaotic situation escalated to the point where Jack and Camilla, who had once vowed eternal love, ended up suing each other for defamation, insult, and damages. As anyone could see, it was a messy fight with no clear resolution in sight. Jack, already on leave from work due to injuries from the accident, frequently missed more work to attend court hearings, causing his company to lose patience. He was transferred to a department considered a career dead end, shattering his self-proclaimed elite pride. Due to the financial burden from various payments linked to the incident, he couldn't afford to resign. On the other hand, Camilla was still on probation, but Camilla, angrier than me, exposed that she had been involved in inappropriate relationships with not just Jack but several other male colleagues at the company. Among the men Camilla was involved with at the company, some were married. Due to disrupting company morale and potentially impacting work, despite being hired through a connection, Camilla was quickly fired without being made a permanent employee. Furthermore, several wives of the married men she was involved with demanded compensation from Camilla. While each claim was settled for a standard amount, the total sum became quite substantial due to the number of cases. If Camilla has to pay the catering shop for damages, the debt she'll accumulate at just 23 will be enormous. Falling into financial difficulty, Camilla frantically looked for another job, but when potential employers asked for a certificate of termination reasons, her prospects dimmed. Ultimately, she gave up on finding a full-time job. Now, she's said to be juggling part-time and temp jobs to make ends meet. I heard through the grapevine that she was seen, unkempt and disheveled, munching on bread while hastily biking through a warehouse district, but that's none of my concern. As for me, despite being caught up in demanding work, I'm living a fulfilling life as before. It's also a joy to have reconciled with my best friend Camila, after a period of misunderstandings and awkwardness. The only issue, if any, is Camila's unchanging nature of not learning her lesson. She keeps inviting me to mixers, saying things like, "Arya, wanna join a mixer next time?" It's organized by that temp worker we met before. She said, "I've gathered only nice people, even though they're divorced." I really think this time it'll be a hit. It's not that I've been put off by my experience with Jack, but for now, I want to enjoy the freedom of being single that I've rediscovered. So, I'm currently trying to figure out how to gently make Camila give up on the idea of dragging me to these events.